The official who testified, we saw the transcript yesterday, Gordon Sondland met directly with the president at least a half dozen times during this period. If he, and here is what he said, he corrected his testimony on September 1st with a top aide in which he said, I said that resumption of U.S. aid would likely not occur until Ukraine provided the public anti-corruption statement that we had been discussing for many weeks. Congressman Scalise, if Gordon Sondland, who met with the president a half dozen times this summer, testifies on Wednesday, yep, the president said to me, we're not releasing the aid until they announce they're going to investigate the Bidens and Burisma, doesn't that blow a hole in the president's defense?
Well, the president's defense is that those things didn't happen. And it's not just the president's word. President Zelensky himself said that the aid wasn't conditioned and there was no pressure. And then because of some of these innuendos that you're talking about, the foreign minister of Ukraine just a few days ago released another statement saying that there was never a link between aid and investigations. And once again, there were only two people that participated in that phone call. It was Donald Trump and President Zelensky. Both of them were very happy with the phone call. Zelensky said there was no pressure.
Sir,
and the real bottom line is he got the money. Ukraine got the money, Chris.
Well, first of all, a dozen people listened in on the phone call, and a number of them were immediately upset because what the president said about Burisma.
Well, those were Schiff's witnesses.
But wait a minute. No, sir. They're career Foreign Service officers, and these are people who worked in the Trump administration.
But Schiff's witnesses. There are other witnesses.
You had a woman yesterday. You had a woman yesterday who was on Vice President Pence's staff. She said it was inappropriate. You had Tim Morrison, who was on the NSC staff, who said that alarm bells immediately went off for him. Alexander Vindman immediately went to see. These are all people, you say they're Schiff's witnesses. They all were working in the Trump administration. But let me get back to my...
Well, no, some of them, they were not all Trump administration folks.
What, are you saying that the person working, Alexander Vindman, wasn't part of the Trump National Security Council?
The Inspector General said that the whistleblower had political motivations.
We're not talking about the whistleblower.
Had some serious concerns about
We're not talking about the whistleblower.
All of these people that have come forward.
And we're talking about the
You've seen our list of who we've asked to testify.
But I'm asking you about these people who worked in the Trump administration, who worked for the Trump National Security Council, or worked for the Vice President's office.
This is an important point, Chris. There are a lot of people who worked in the Trump administration who have very countering views to that, and they've not been allowed to come forward. So it's nice that some people can say one thing about a third-hand information phone call. There's something else that other people can counter that with, and they haven't been allowed to come forward. But ultimately, President Trump and President Zelensky were the ones on the call. Both of them said there was nothing wrong. The foreign minister of Ukraine just came out a few days ago to clear some of this up, to say there was never a link between money.
He incidentally was not on the call either. But if I could go back to Gordon Sondland. If Gordon Sondland says the president told him condition aid to Ukraine on investigating the Bidens, are you going to say that he's wrong, that he's lying?
Look, I know you've been asking and others have asked hypothetical questions. Let's talk in reality. Why don't we look at the three witnesses who actually did testify this week? All three of them were asked by, whether it was John Ratcliffe or whether it was Chris Stewart, all three of them were asked, did you see any impeachable offenses? Did you see any bribery? Any of that? Not one of those things were mentioned. Not one person said they saw a crime committed.
Sir, with all due respect, with all due respect, that very badly mischaracterizes what they said. They were asked, William Taylor, for instance, the acting ambassador in Ukraine, was asked whether or not these were impeachable offenses. He said, I'm there as a fact witness. I'm not there to pass judgment. But he made it clear what he thought about what the president was doing. Here he is.
To withhold that assistance for no good reason other than help with a political campaign made no sense. It was counterproductive to all of what we had been trying to do. It was illogical. It could not be explained. It was crazy.
He said withholding military aid to help with the president's political campaign was crazy.
And the problem with that is it didn't happen, Chris. The Ukraine foreign minister based probably on some of that testimony, said it didn't happen. Zelensky said it didn't happen. And those are the people directly involved. You can bring out people that have third and fourth-hand information. I thought this was supposed to be about finding facts. And if they're going to try to impeach a president of the United States, shouldn't it be based on something that actually happened versus one person's opinion of a third-hand conversation?
Well, okay.
That's
all right.
really what this is all about.
You raised the question that I had raised, a hypothetical, and I think that's fair, sir. Are you saying, though, because Gordon Sondland was a direct witness, he spoke to the president in the Oval Office, are you willing to abide by whatever Gordon Sondland says happened?
Abide by Gordon Sondland. I abide by what the president did and what President Zelensky actually received. President Zelensky received the money. Barack Obama wouldn't give that money, by the way.
But, sir, I mean,
you're
right. President Trump has been much tougher in terms of giving aid to Ukraine than President Obama was. But President Trump released the aid 2 days after the whistleblower complaint went public.
Well, President Trump released the aid after he made sure by law, by the way, and Pelosi voted for that law, Schiff voted for the law that requires that he ensure that corruption is being rooted out before taxpayer money goes to a country like that.
Okay, I got 2 more questions. I got 2 minutes, so I'm going to ask you to squeeze if you can. We mentioned at the top the president's decision on Friday to clear 3 members of the military who had been accused or convicted of war crimes. Senior Pentagon officials advised the president against it, said that it would undermine the military justice system. Clearly, the president is the commander-in-chief. He's well within his rights. Do you have any problem with his decision to clear these 3 men?
No, I think there have been a lot of concerns expressed over the years that many of our men and women in uniform that were out battling terrorists in the battlefield were being put in a position where they had to think about whether or not, if they returned fire, if they defended themselves. Some of these people mentioned that were killed were terrorists, bomb-making terrorists, and yet our men and women, men in uniform in this case, were in jail for 25-plus years for killing a terrorist in the battlefield. I think our troops, morale is much higher amongst troops I've heard from, because this has been a concern I've heard from our men and women in uniform in battlefield for years, that they felt that they were sidelined because they needed a team of attorneys before they could return fire in a battlefield. Okay,
now I got 1 minute left. You had an election yesterday in Louisiana, and the Democratic governor, John Bel Edwards, was reelected. President Trump was in there campaigning hard multiple times and said, look, if Eddie Rispone, the Republican, doesn't win, it's going to make me, Trump, look bad because I don't have any coattails. Does it make him look bad?
Well, what he said was that he'd be made to look bad whether he came in the state or not. Eddie Rispone made up about a 22-point disadvantage over the last month because of President Trump's involvement. So Eddie Rispone was at about 27 in the primary. He ended up at 49. So clearly President Trump's involvement made a big difference at helping close that massive gap. And look, the governor's polling showed he was above 50 before President Trump first started getting involved. That forced a runoff.
Congressman Scalise, thank you.